Captain Francis J. Dougherty.
Well, when you go through those cycles, you know, your boards meet and you get your record is reviewed and so forth. So, you know, after being XO of a carrier, you know, you're in position to screen, or an air wing commander is in position to be screened for a deep draft command. And so I was screened for command, and I was selected to be CO of a ship. And I went to that ship and had to change of command in Naples, Italy, and it was a great tour of duty. AFS was an especially fun command because you did a lot of things and you operated pretty much independently. And you just went to all the ships around the Med and service them, and you know, provide you know, food, spare parts, and take some of the record grade things back and so forth. It was right, and also going to some very interesting ports and so forth where you'd reload. You know, I'd go in there and it'd be 250 tractor trailers, and we load the ship back up and go back out to sea and do our thing. So it was great. At the change of command, one of my old buddies, a guy named Bear Taylor, at the time was the CEO of the Coral Sea, which had come through the Suez Canal. It was back in this Beirut time frame, 83 to 85. There's a lot of activity going on there. So they sent a West Coast ship through the Suez to operate in the Med, just to have a greater presence there. So Bear was at my change of command, and he said, you know, to answer your question about what's it feel like once you're it, right? Okay, so he said, I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. He said, no matter what they say, you're the smartest guy on the ship. Okay, if you think you're going too fast, you probably are, and the rest of them are all trying to kill you. Let's never forget that. I laughed at the time, but sure enough, about 5 days later, we leave Naples, we go down, and we're going into La Maddalena, where we had a submarine tender, right? So there are a couple ways to get in there. You get down from the north side through the Straits of Bonifacio, and you go in there, and we go in there and anchor and fly the helicopters and have barges alongside. So, well, the other way is you can enter from the eastern side through a very, very narrow opening. So you're coming in off sea, and you go through this little cut, and then you go into this bigger bay area, and you go anchor and so forth. So I'm looking at the chart here, and I said, have you guys done this before? And they said, oh yes sir, we've been in there many times this way. It's really a piece of cake, and it doesn't take long. Right? I said, it looks kind of narrow. They said, yeah it is, but there's plenty of room, right? So anyways, we get out there, and the weather's kind of crappy, so I did a couple of 360s for an hour or so until it cleared up a little bit. So we get through there, and I'll tell you what, I could almost spit on the ground where this thing was so tight from the wing of the bridge. And I said, we're never going through there again. So, but anyway, we had a wonderful crew on there, and great deployment and so forth. But it was fun. But you do have that once you're there, you know, you're it, right? So you have that burden of responsibility there. So sometimes you have to make the right decisions, and if you don't make the right decision, you know, some bad things can happen. Fortunately, I had a very successful tour. Oh no, we would do at sea, and sometimes I'd have a carrier on port side and a destroyer on starboard side. And so the replenishment ship's obligation is to maintain course and speed. And the other ships, when they get hooked up and so forth, they maneuver to, you know, you're basically flying wing on the replenishment ship. And then I had two H-46 helos aboard. So I'd be flying helos as well as, like when a carrier did, we'd have 4 wires, and then we'd have 2 helos, and we could do a lot of transferring of lots of food and parts and so forth in a fairly short period of time. But a lot of times we'd be hooked up for at least 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. We used to try to do around 12 knots as a kind of it was a good speed for both ships to maintain position and so forth. And obviously we didn't want to have really big sea states, and once in a while it depended on where you were too, how much sea room you had to keep the ship into the wave fronts and so forth, so you weren't rolling. You know, maybe a little bit of up and down pitching, but we didn't want to get into rolling situations. And it was just one of those things. You'd have to make the call on a given day, and obviously, you know, high sea states you wouldn't do it and so forth. But you wanted to have a reasonably calm sea, not flat water we're talking about, but you know, the normal wave intervals and so forth, so that the ship was controllable and it wasn't rolling a whole lot. And, you know, so you know, you could, because a lot of guys are doing a lot of dangerous stuff with it, so these wires hooked up and so forth. And the usual distance that the two ships are apart. In fact, that's what kind of intrigued me about this thing was, heretofore I was on Kennedy, you know, and driving the ship alongside one of these things, and you had to maintain position. We'd have the helmsman would have a magnifying glass over this thing, but sometimes you're making quarter or half degree course changes, adjustments, just that you're basically flying wing on this other ship. And the interval distance you used to try to maintain is 140 feet, which is pretty close, but comfortable, you know. And you didn't want to get too far apart because then the wires start to get stretched and the ship starts moving a little bit and you could break the wires and those kinds of things. But so then being on the control ship, the unrep ship, you're just maintaining course and speed, make sure you don't screw these guys up for flying wing on you by doing any kind of funny maneuvers and so